that is recognized in Greek mythology. It was a mythical creature that had the body and talons of a bird of prey, an eagle or a hawk, and the head of a woman traditionally. And the harpies in mythology symbolize storms, winds. They were messengers of the gods. They were avengers. So they're often seen as very terrifying, imposing, seizing creatures. So they can grasp, they can seize. And so you can kind of see where that formidable presence comes about in such a large, powerful bird. And the harpy is actually one of 3 of the largest eagles in the world. It's the only one for this hemisphere. So in the Americas, in the Western hemisphere, the harpy eagle is the largest eagle. I love to brag to our friends from North America that it is larger than both the bald and the golden eagle by quite a bit. And it's outranked or closely matched only by the stellar sea eagle, which we find over in Asia, and the Philippine eagle, which we find in the forests of the Philippines, right? So in terms of range, as I said, they're the only eagle we have this side of the world that is so massive. We used to find them from Mexico all the way through South America, but of course, due to many different threats, which I'll touch on very briefly, they have shrunk in their range. Belize is thankfully one of the last strongholds for the harpy, but there are a few more pockets in South America where they have decent populations of them. And sadly, they're considered locally extinct, meaning you can't find them in these countries anymore, in Mexico, Guatemala, and parts of the Pacific side of Central America. So they are no longer homes to the harpy eagle. We keep saying it's a big eagle, a massive eagle. How big is big? Almost as tall as the mascot that's just about to walk in. Very good timing. I love it. Not as tall, but I think our real harpies outmatch you maybe in wingspan. So our harpies stand at about 3 feet in height. They have a 6.5 foot wingspan. There we go. Really good impression by the harpy eagle mascot. Thank you. Can someone measure your wingspan? We'll say it's 6.5 feet. The males of this species can weigh around 12 pounds, but the females are the most imposing and significant. They can weigh up to 20 pounds. So they're almost 50% as large as their male counterparts, right? And just for a point of reference, since the bald eagle is very well known, the largest female bald eagle tends to max out at around 12 pounds. So the males of our harpies are just as large as a female bald, but the harpy eagles outrank them in terms of weight, right? They can go up to 20 pounds. And they're really well designed for their life in the forest. They have a crushing force in their talons of over 500 pounds per square inch. So even though we know birds of prey to be known for their beaks, where their power really lies is in their talons, right? That's where all the power is. Even with that impressive 6.5 foot wingspan, it's kind of short for how they maneuver in the forest. They have to be quick. They have to be agile. So the wingspan is a little bit smaller than it should be for a creature of that weight. They have this really cool built-in, I call it the built-in baseball cap, like that gentleman's wearing. The ridge in their skull is built specifically for keeping the sun out of their eyes. So the fancy word for it, our vet tech students might know this, is the supraorbital ridge. Baseball cap in the head, right? So it keeps sun out of their eyes. It gives them a bit more protection as they're maneuvering through the forest. Their eyesight is 8 times better than ours, even with glasses, and they have an exceptional sense of hearing. When you see the harpies fluffing up their facial disc and their crest, it makes them look a lot cooler, but it also helps to direct sound, so they're able to detect where a prey or a potential threat is coming from and lock in on it and react accordingly, right? So very well designed for their life in the trees. And these birds are very long-lived. They can live over 50 years. I think the oldest on record that we know of was about 53 years when they passed. And they become able to become parents between 4 and 6 years old. They bond for life, like a lot of different birds of prey. And they'll lay a couple eggs, which will take almost 2 months to hatch. And then they spend quite a bit of time rearing those young ones, usually 1 or 2. In the wild, their life expectancy is a little less. It can be between 25 and 30 years, depending on how lucky they are. They do encounter challenges, injuries, disease, that sort of thing, right? And as I said, this is a forest bird. They're not typically above the canopy. They don't like to go on the coast. They're not out in the open typically. They are designed for a life in the canopy. And so that's what they do most of their hunting. And they will cover a lot of distance. They will move through the forests of Belize and beyond just by hopping and gliding consistently. And that's how they seek out their prey as well. So they hunt up in the trees. They are an aerialist by nature. So if you were a hungry harpy, what would you be looking for in the trees? Any guesses? You're a 12 to 20 pound bird of prey. You have powerful talons. You have powerful wings. What are you chasing that's up in the trees? Any ideas? Monkeys. What else? Sloths. In parts of their range that they have sloths. We don't have them here, but in Costa Rica, in South America, they hunt sloths. Give me one more. Squirrels. There you go. So, monkeys, coatimundis, tamanduá, or anteater. Some of the game birds that Belizeans enjoy, like the quam and the curassow. The harpies enjoy them as well. And our gray foxes, as tiny as they are able to climb trees. They're very nimble. So unfortunately, they end up on the harpy eagle's menu now and again. Our porcupines, they can handle, and of course, snakes. So anything that's up in the trees is open for hunting by the harpy, right? And if I just jump back here, you'll actually see in that image, can anyone tell me what the harpy has in its talons? Gray fox. So this was one of the eagles that we had released, and we had managed to study what they were actually hunting. And that's how we built that little list, right? And because of their role in the forest, they are what you call an apex predator. There's nothing above them. They are critical for stabilizing populations. They're an agent for natural selection, for evolution. They drive that ability of animals to adapt, to evade predators. They can remove diseased or infirm individuals from a population. So they're really critical for maintaining the health of the forest that they occupy, right? So they really, apart from taking animals, they keep everything in balance as an apex predator. But despite all this majesty we have and the respect and the admiration we have for the harpy eagle, we also know that they are an endangered or threatened species. Habitat loss is one of their biggest challenges, much like many species we know throughout the country, like the jaguar, the tapir. But specific to the harpy too, they have been traditionally hunted just for the sport of it, for being able to claim that you brought down this massive bird of prey. So trophy hunting has occurred in areas where harpies occur. And there's also lethal persecution, stemming a lot from the belief that such a big bird might pose a threat to my pet dog, my pet cat, or even my children. So there was a lot of misunderstanding about what a harpy can and can't do. And so misunderstanding, misinformation, fear, concern, as we know, can stem into a lethal reaction to some of these animals, just like we see with jaguars and others. So they have been killed out of the fear that they may harm someone's loved ones or beloved pets, right? Even though, as we've established, they, as much as they can, stay up in the trees. So because of that, the zoo was involved in the early 2000s with trying to boost the population that we had in Belize and the region. So for 6 years, we were able to work along with a few partners internationally to have harpies that were bred in Panama, transferred up to Belize, overnighted, quarantined at the zoo, and then transferred into the Chiquibol and the Rio Bravo forests, just for their sheer size and their ability to absorb and support such big birds. And so we had success with that, as I said, with 15 eagles. They were tracked. We were able to see how they used their landscape, what they were eating, to really learn some of these critical parts of their life history that we really didn't know about these birds in this region. And the best part of it too was we had an incredible shift in some of the attitudes and perceptions of harpies. We went from some of the communities being really nervous that we're releasing these giant birds into their backyard, to the very end where they would literally close the school and make sure the children are out waiting when the truck, or the plane, in that case, we had the BDF flying in some of the birds up into Blue Creek when we were taking them to Rio Bravo. And the community members, the village council, everyone would join the caravan into the reserve. And some of them would even have the lucky opportunity to release the bird into the wild, officially open the cage and let them out. So we had this transformation of understanding about these birds and why we should be proud that they are still occupying Belize's forests, right? Rather than worrying about what harm they might do. So two kind of, I wouldn't say remnants, but the last representations of that program actually live at the zoo currently. So if you haven't had the privilege of seeing a harpy face to face, I had someone come up to me, or we're having a discussion about how big they actually are. Someone thought they were like chicken sized. They're not, they're huge. So if you want proof, there's two living at the zoo, the Queen and Panama. Panama is a little bit friendlier. I would recommend taking your chances trying to have a conversation with him. The queen lives up to her name. She looks down on the world. She's very royal and imperious. But they were both part of this program. They were both harpies that were not able to be released, but they were basically the ambassadors for the education that we're able to do while releasing the wild ones into the wild. And so this will wow and inspire and strike awe into thousands of visitors every year at the Belize Zoo. Currently, so that chapter of release has closed. Of course, we did that in the early 2000s. What we know about harpies today, it's still very limited. They've never been a bird that has been very populous. They're huge, they need a lot of space, so we've always had a relatively low population. We know that for the most part, they live in the Maya Mountains. They like the southwestern part of the country. They like deep, true rainforest, rugged terrain where they won't see much people. The last known nest, at least on official record, there may have been other sightings, but the ones we know of was a nest in the Bladen Nature Reserve in 2011. There is an adult female that shows up every now and again at the Belize Foundation for Research and Environmental Education, Be Free, their research station in the Bladen. It shows up right in a cyber tree outside their cantina, stays for a photo op. In fact, that's her in the image there taken by my colleague Giovanni. So she's very photogenic, but she shows up when she wants to, and then she vanishes for a year or two. The most recent sighting was a couple of years ago by a tourist who had gotten photographic evidence of one right at the Blue Hole just outside of Belmopan. So that was significant because we've never seen them that far north, but it might have been a young bird dispersing, looking for its space, which we know is a big part of their life history. That's one of the things that we had learned when we were releasing these birds. They're big birds, they need big forests. They need a lot of space to thrive. We had one that we released in Rio Bravo. It ignored boundaries, went to Calakmul, came back, went to Tikal, came back, and one that went all the way as far as Laguna del Tigre in Guatemala and set up shop there. So they need, and of course, they need to be able to have space where they're not competing with other individuals of their species, right? So they are kind of that emblem for protecting large tracts of forests, especially in our region. So while we talk about forests for different animals, you'll hear people advocating for macaws, for jaguars, for tapirs. It's all interconnected. So for the purposes of our chat here at Galen, I like to share that the fact that Belize is advocating for stronger protected areas and trying to bolster the protected areas we have existing does benefit or improve the chances of some of these species thriving or remaining in our country. So we don't go the way of our neighbors that have to say, oh, we used to have harpies here, or we used to have tapirs, right? So there's currently initiatives, for example, like the Maya Forest Corridor in central Belize that connects the Selva Maya in the north and the Maya Mountains in the south. And collectively, that one big block forms the largest block of forest north of the Amazon basin. It's one of the 5 great forests of Mesoamerica, but only if we keep that connectivity, right? If the corridor is cut, then you just have 2 reasonably or respectably sized blocks, but nothing in between that these animals can migrate. As we saw, like with the harpy, they need that corridor to thrive, right? So again, a credit to Belize that we're pushing for these sorts of initiatives. It benefits not just harpies, but some of the many communities that derive ecosystem services, the traditional hunting, medicine, lumber, timber, all that sort of thing. So it's a collective ecosystem that we try to preserve. But for some people, it's great to put like a face to it. So those people that are really into giant creatures, then the harpy works, right? If you prefer tapirs, the tapir work. But we're putting on our harpy hats today to talk about how important forests are, right? Any questions about the harpy? And no, I did not bring that costume with me, sorry. Any questions, any comments about the harpy? Yes? Mm-hmm. They can live over 50 years in like an ideal or a zoological setting. On average, in the wild, it would be obviously quite a bit less, over 25. Correct, definitely, yeah. And they're in such a rugged area that there's very little chance that people will interfere with them, that they'll be harassed or shot. So she will hopefully keep showing up. Yeah. Right, okay. Okay, so shot. Right. Okay. Right. Right. Thanks for that. Any other questions? Any other sightings? Yes. They'll lay between, I believe it's 2 or 3 eggs. But generally, the rearing, sorry, they'll lay 1 to 2 eggs, maybe one more, but because of the amount of effort it takes into rearing the young, if one hatch, they tend to focus solely on that one. If there's a big window between the other one hatching, so they'll rear maybe one every couple of years because they both dedicate time to rearing it, and even after the chick has kind of officially fledged the nest, they'll still hang out near mom and dad. So it would be every between the window of laying it, so it takes 2 months more or less to hatch, and the rearing, there's a 2 to 3 year window that you basically say that they'll be breeding. So those of you who are good at math, you could say 25 divided by 3, and it gives you a rough idea of how productive or how the reproductive success of a paired two sets of harpy or a set of harpy eagles, right? No, in terms of like what we could in theory sustain, I've heard like a conservative estimate of maybe 50. Like Belize's capacity for harpies, 50. That's like that's like ideal. If the Rio Bravo stays intact, the Chicky Bull, we could maybe. No, I don't think so. No, just based on the sporadic sightings, I don't think we have 50. I would be confident with maybe a dozen. Yeah, at the moment. Yeah. Compared to, and again, it's relative. Like I said, a lot of our neighbors can't even boast having one. It's been years, decades since they've had any sightings. Yeah. So, yes. Yeah. Mhm. Yes, they are very vocal. They have excellent eyesight. They are very vocal. I haven't had the privilege, but some of my colleagues have had the privilege of hearing harpies in the wild. It's a very distinctive call, and of course they recognize their vocalizations. Yeah, yeah, yes, very shrill. They couldn't. Yeah, I mean there may be rivalry, but they'll typically know that there's some boundaries there at least, so they have to contend with a rival or a competitor. They can. We haven't had evidence of it. We know even their mating rituals look very much like fighting. There's a lot of claws and talons involved, so it's probably very spectacular. But I don't think anyone's documented fights between harpies. But I'm sure it happens because it happens with other birds of prey. Yeah. And sorry, go ahead. Mhm. Once they've bonded, they share a territory, so they will stay together for life, and they'll occupy and manage or defend one territory. Yeah. So there's probably not a lot of rivalry in between the sexes. Yeah. For them, not in Belize, but they have been studied in other countries. Yes. Yeah. Because with the ones we had released, unfortunately, none of them. We were hoping we'd see a bit of matchmaking, but we only saw them operating as individuals. So the harpies we released in the early 2000s, they never actually met up. They all kind of dispersed at different areas, and they didn't. At least during the time we were able to monitor them, we didn't see them coming together. They are, yes, and with rearing too. So if you're ever wondering what a harpy eagle nest looks like, it's can be up to 5 inches in diameter, and they usually build it up in the emergent trees, so up in the ceiba, anything that's above the canopy. And the females do most of the incubation and rearing of the young, but they do alternate. So the males are responsible for going out to hunt for himself and his new family. And that's part of the reason why we think they're a little bit smaller, so they're a bit quicker, a bit more agile. But they do trade off. The females will go off and hunt as well, but they are larger to be able to defend the nests, right? Yeah. Thank you very much for your question. Oh, sorry. Male and female. We have Panama and the Queen. Yes. They have not yet. No, we are very nervous about introducing them. They have very different personalities. The Queen is much more wild. She was actually released into the wild and refused to stay. She said, no, I'm coming back. The Panama was never trained to be released. He had been identified as not a good candidate. So he's a lot more, he identifies more with people than with harpies. Yeah, so we're not quite sure he would be an eligible candidate for her, and the queen is very impatient. Yeah, so he needs a bit more coaching. Yes. Thank you very much for your attention, everyone.